Good evening to you, Chops.
Blessed evening to you, neighbor. How are you doing?
Well, I'm all right. How are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good this evening.
Chops me that you wrote an article to what Dr. King is suggesting. You want to share with us why you felt that it was necessary for you to respond to Dr. King?
Yeah,
by the way, before you respond,
yes.
Do you think that this is an important subject to discuss in the context of all else that is happening in Jamaica? Do you think that this is important?
Well, this is exactly part of what is happening in Jamaica. A matter of fact, it is quite relevant today more than any other time. I mean, he made these comments just days after the Minister of Energy came out and make an announcement that one could deem as extremely positive in terms of the possibility of Jamaica discovering oil on our shores. So his position on the issue was extremely timely. I found it very, very disappointing, neighbor. And it's disappointing to me because it's coming from somebody who is responsible for molding the minds of professionals in this country. And I'm worried because when persons who hold these sort of positions in Jamaica have these, think this sort of way, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, why is it that we're not better than we are today? Why is it that Jamaica is not the Singapore of the Caribbean? And the reason Jamaica is not the Singapore of the Caribbean is exactly, it falls squarely at the thinking of persons like Dr. Damian King, who believe that the country is stagnant. The thinking is stagnant, static, can't grow, can't evolve, not moving. Yeah, and that's not true.
Isn't it a subtle, and may I say even disrespectful attack
to the leadership
on the leadership of the country?
Absolutely, and that's exactly where I wanted to go with you, because I would ask Dr. King the question: if he thinks that Jamaica is just a simple, hopeless country, who will fall victim to what he described as resource curse. The narrative that he posited, might sound intellectually appealing to some people, but it ignores a very hard reality of how far this country has come. Over the last decade, neighbor, just in case Dr. King don't know, over the last decade, or matter of fact, last 20 years, 10 years, let me not say 20 years, the last decade, Jamaica has built one of the most disciplined fiscal framework in the Caribbean, And I mentioned it last night.
Yes.
Over the last 10 years, Jamaica has built out one of the most disciplined fiscal framework in the entire Caribbean. We operate under a fiscal responsibility rule, the fiscal rule we call it, that was implemented back in started in 2007 under Bruce Cody and Ardishaw. Yeah?
Yes.
Those laws legally restrain reckless spending, reckless government spending that existed under the PNP during the 1990s. The fiscal rule prevent those and restrain reckless spending. Our central bank, which is one of the hallmark of our financial system, is an independent institution.
Yes.
We have been a model for managing inflation and shielding the country from instability. Yeah. We have one of the most, we are getting now almost there, one of the most modern procurement law. We have some of the most active oversight bodies in the Caribbean. We participate in global. Yes.
Yeah, am I not correct to point out that the greatest evidence that we have responsible leaders is the last election?
Precisely,
where
sir.
the government had the fiscal space to spend money and
never
cover
did.
up the system and chose not to do it. As a matter of fact, the government risked losing the election because
and told the people to their face. The government told the people to their face.
Yeah, and my understanding, Chops Media, is that the finance minister previous came under pressure from inside the party because people were in there saying that things should be spent in a particular way, and the government resisted it to say no, we must maintain fiscal discipline. Isn't that the greatest evidence that Dr. King's argument is a disrespect to this?
It's a flawed argument, and it's not the first. There's another article there's another position he took some time ago, and I responded to it openly in the Gleaner. But this time, this one, as the old people would say, this one take the cake. Listen, there are some countries, neighbor, that has oil, yeah? And countries like Norway, and I know he mentioned Norway in his interview on Nationwide, right? Some of the very institutions that Norway established to protect itself and to safeguard itself, Jamaica is a signatory to some of those global institutions. The same institutions that Norway is a signatory to, that assist in keeping them on the straight and narrow. Jamaica is a signatory to those institutions. The question I'd love to ask Dr. King, is he pretending that none of these institutions that we're talking about here exist in Jamaica? Yeah? Norway did not avoid resource curse like Dr. King is saying because they discovered oil. Yeah? They didn't avoid it. They didn't just put themselves in a position to. I mean, have you listened to the man's interview this evening, sir? Other than the article that he wrote, the gentleman said
I actually played a bit of it here earlier. Let me ask you though, should an economist be advising a country not to avoid opportunity? Should an economist not be advising a country how to prepare for opportunity?
That's what I'm saying.
What type of economist tells a country don't accept economic opportunity, sir? That's not an economist.
But that's the person who is lecturing. He's training people to come out of the university with that sort of nonsense thinking. He is preparing folks to come into the society to help us to lead this country with that sort of warp thinking.
In other words, he is promoting a mindset of national limitation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is exactly what he's doing. He's saying to us that we're not capable of going any further than we are.
Yeah.
We cannot.
No, Dr. King correctly pointed to the 1970s with the bauxite opportunity we had, and indeed, Chops Media, we wasted that opportunity. Does that not point to mismanagement and leadership of that time? It's an unfair comparison, is it not?
It is an unfair comparison. Let me tell you something, and Dr. King knows it more than I do. Yeah. The 1970s, when we discovered bauxite, it was not bauxite that caused us to miss the opportunities of the 1970s.
Yeah.
It has to do with leadership.
Could you help us to understand the bauxite levy? And I heard him say something about there was a fund that they set up for the bauxite money to go into, but the government would transfer it into the consult fund. Help us to understand how the bauxite opportunity was missed.
The bauxite levy, which Michael Manley instituted when he came into I think it was 1974. Yeah? I cannot say it was a bad idea, because getting the requisite resources, benefit from the resources, maximizing your opportunities is good. But what do you do with that money? When you put that money in the consolidated fund and you start to mismanage the consol fund, then you're wasting that opportunity right there. What caused the problem, neighbor, in the 70s as it relates to the bauxite levy was that we were using those funds to create initiatives that were not sustainable. They were not sustainable initiatives. They were not initiatives that would, provide any improvement to our people and getting them in a position where they can produce more for the country, because you can only produce yourself out of your situation,
Right.
And they were not producing. So the misuse of that fund is the problem. Again, it comes back to leadership. And what Dr. King is suggesting is that Jamaica should avoid the potential economic opportunity because of what might go wrong, and ignore the progress that we have made as a country.
Is Dr. King subtly suggesting that he fears that if the PNP returns, then we will waste the resources? Or is Dr. King saying that the Andrew Holness-led administration is as incapable of doing it as the PNP? What really is the fear that Dr. King has?
Well, if Dr. King is saying to us that he, in his forecast, believe that the Jamaica Labour Party will not form the government at the time when oil...
Because he has admitted, sorry, Chops, he has admitted the progress we have made since 2020, because when Chevron pressed him on it, he admits to that yes, we are better managers of the economy. So is Dr. King subtly forecasting that he is not confident that the government will remain, and therefore he fears that if the government changes, the PNP's historic recklessness probably is what he's really fearing? Would you give him the credit for that?
Well, he had the opportunity to say it if he wanted to. He could have said it. So I'm not sure if I want to give him that. What he could say, though, is he could now, as an economist, point us in a direction where we could strengthen our institutions and put a system in place to prevent any incoming government, whether it is the JLP returning or the PNP, that they would find it very difficult to make certain changes that will see us ruining the opportunities that presents itself to us. I think what he should be doing is to providing some guidance on how can we institutionalize further to strengthen the system of governance that we have, to ensure that whether JLP or PNP, as I said before, will not be able to misuse the opportunities. I think that's where the real conversation is. How can we strengthen our institution?
Yes, I agree. Let me ask you this also before Harry comes in. There is a kind of inherited pessimism that is common, Chops, in post-colonial societies, because colonial systems trained Caribbean economies to extract, but not to control.
That's a fact.
The history. That's a fact?
That is 100% correct. And these are the things that Dr. King needs to speak to.
Correct. So the history created a belief that we can manage our own wealth responsibly. It's self-doubt disguised as prudence. And Chops Media, I wonder if the University of the West Indies don't need to be liberated, from that type of thinking, because if they are managing or inspiring or training minds in this post-colonial era. That type of thinking ought to be dead, man, coming out of the creme de la creme of universities in Jamaica.
Liberating the universe, neighbor, let me tell you something. You see, if universities in China and in Japan and in some European countries are very active, in helping to shape how the country, the direction in which the country goes.
And they should.
And if you remember, go back to Tiananmen Square in China. Go back to several revolutions that in Asia and other countries, the university led those. There are certain changes in countries in Europe and in Asia that were led by universities. It is unfortunate that we have a very strong university here that honestly have not been really active in helping to strengthen the narrative and to put the narrative out there that will strengthen the country. They have not been. The University of the West Indies is perhaps a part of the problem, neighbor.
Well, I never wanted to go there with you, but let me put this to you. Resource curse. Wouldn't you agree with me that our people are our greatest resource?
Absolutely, sir. So we are cursed.
Well, I think you're making the point, because quite frankly, Chops Media, the argument really about resource is that if we develop our people and get our people to be productive, we don't have to be worrying about anything else, because as he points out, Singapore don't even have any resources, natural resources, but look what they have done. And part of the failure of the opposition, I was going to play back the points you made on this program here last night, is that we have missed opportunities to develop our people. Because when you develop your people, the man who is working $16,000 a week is capable of working $70,000 a week in a Chops Media. Not true?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, sir. 100% correct. 100% correct. We've missed so many. Last night I spoke about the period in which the lost opportunities exist, and Dr. King really made a comment. And neighbor, Dr. King is pointing to a real economic risk, There is an economic risk. But an economic risk doesn't necessarily, you can't avoid risk. Risk is always there, right? But countries avoid it through strong institutions and fiscal discipline. That's what countries do, to avoid the risk. The risk of what Dr. King and others describe as resource curse. The way to avoid it is to have strong institutions, fiscal discipline, transparency, and a long-term plan. Norway, Norway is the highest standard of what we're talking about, right? The question really, it shouldn't be, does Jamaica have oil? But it should be, does Jamaica have the governance framework in place to manage the resources if it is found in Jamaica? Yeah? That's what the question needs to be.
And I believe we do.
And the short answer, if you ask me, if you wake me up in the dead of night and ask me that question, the answer would be absolutely. Jamaica already have some of those institutions, the core safeguards in place, right? To protect us from what Dr. King described as a resource curse. Jamaica already have many of the core safeguards in place already. Yeah? And we have them.
Yes. Absolutely. And so Chops Media, opportunity is not the enemy. Mismanagement.
Absolutely. And the solution to get rid of that enemy is to ensure that you have a good government in place, a strong government that can put the necessary institutions in place, right? To make sure that we are safeguarded, the country is guarded against the mismanagement.